On behalf of President Perez, who is attending the annual convention of the American Association of Community Colleges in San Francisco and cannot attend this event, I want to welcome you to this important workshop, which is one of several the unions and the campus will be hosting. I have a few messages from Dr. Perez that he has asked me to share with you. It is important that we continue to learn about campus culture, student success, and the ability of faculty, staff, and students to communicate and exchange ideas depend on how our culture facilitates those processes. Greg Tanaka has studied and analyzed intercultural relations on college campuses and can share how we, as an institution of higher education, can improve our understanding of professional relationships to further student success. I would like to thank the AFT Faculty Guild and all of the campus's union leadership for sponsoring this event. This workshop on intercultural development will be duly noted by the ACCJC as the campus strives to meet their expectations to improve campus communication and dialogue. As many of you probably saw in an email that I sent out last week, this event is important not only because of accreditation, but because of the fact that it's the right thing to do. We want to build a campus where we have the freedom to teach, learn, and communicate. So thank you for attending, and I will now hand it over to AFT Faculty Guild President Louise Barbato.
Okay, welcome to all of you. Unfortunately, we'll be starting this meeting with a sad note, and that is one of our adjunct faculty members passed away last week. Her name is Pamela Grant Dixon. She taught psychology here for over 15 years. We have a picture up on the board there with her son. So, of course, these things are always with great regret because she was one of our family, and we will really miss her. Is there anybody in the room who would like to say a few words in her honor? I know it's emotional and it's difficult, so it's understandable, but I thought I'd at least give that opportunity. Okay, let's take a couple of moments right now of silence in her honor, please. We will definitely miss her smile. I know I can say that for myself. I invite you all to read the report that you picked up when you came in. I put down all the important things that you need to know regarding guild business for AFT faculty. Please have a look at that, and if you have any questions, make sure that you don't hesitate to ask. Before we begin, we always have to do our thank yous because there's so many people who do so much behind the scenes to make these events happen. Olivia Sanchez has been invaluable. She's over there. Julius Walker might not be in the room, but he's a real help with facilitating everything. Of course, Tara Ward with room set up and everything else. I don't know if she's here. Terry Carter is here, for sure, he's in the back. And Leonard Batista, I saw him a minute ago, I didn't get to say hello, but he's here as well taking photos. There he is, thank you, Leonard. And also Louise Andalazzini, Chef Ramiro, and the whole culinary staff, as usual. So thank you. This is a cross-campus meeting today. Yesterday we met with ASO and the students and did a similar workshop. Right now I'd like to welcome our classified staff, our facilities people, if there's anybody here, and of course faculty and administrators. I'd also like to send out a special welcome to our ATD visitors, Achieve the Dream, so Dr. Homero Suarez and Dr. Lucelma Canales. So welcome. And we're glad that you're here to see the type of things that we do at Mission College, so this is great. You all know, if you've been attending guild meetings this year, that we have put forth a constant effort to try to adjust and address the climate here at Mission College. And today's workshop is another effort in that direction. And it's the right effort that we should be making at this moment. So I'm not going to say very much for a change and give all our time to Dr. Tanaka, who we're very honored to have here today. I hope you read his bio. His list of degrees give me goosebumps, you know. A degree in law from Georgetown, 2 PhDs from, was it UCLA? And of course there's that MBA from Harvard. You don't want to leave that out. And he was telling me yesterday there's even another one he was thinking of doing. So this is a true lifelong learner, and we're so privileged that he comes to us not only with his education, his research background, and his experience across the country talking about diversity and encouraging diversity. So welcome, Dr. Tanaka.
Thank you very much, Louise. I think you all have probably figured out by now that all those degrees, that's a kind of a clear signal of insecurity. So let's just put that on the table here to begin with. That's why I'm saying I'm thinking about another degree. I'm still insecure. Okay. We're going to talk about diversity, but actually this is going to be a very interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary afternoon, and I'm going to try to bring in strands from a critique of capitalism, a critique of the democracy. We're going to do intercultural storytelling in the middle segment, and then we're going to do in the last segment, I'm going to be asking all of you to think about what kind of democracy we might have in the future if we could dream of a better democracy, a democracy that's more by, for, and of the people. And that being the case, with your model in mind, what would be the role of education in preparing the citizens for that next democracy? So that's the larger scope of what we're going to be doing today. Okay. So first I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to be passing this out to you, there's sort of gray things over there. Maybe we could start doing that now. My thesis is that we are in the early stages of a systemic collapse in this country, also of the Western world, but basically of the global economy. And with that will come a steep questioning of the democracy itself, at least the kind we've been practicing in the US recently. I will argue that the total collapse in the economy is already underway, and so I'm going to refer to some statistics right now. So I think you can see from the beginning here, we're not going to be having a touchy-feely or normal kind of diversity kind of training. Nothing like that, not this all can we get along kind of thing. It's actually what skill sets will we need in order to teach the next generation to rebuild our country. Because as we enter a kind of collapse, you know, we're very American, right? We're very pragmatic. It's a can-do kind of society. So we're not going to sit down and just cry over this. We're going to start to move forward and rebuild things, even as the collapse is happening. So that's why I'm positioning this workshop and dialogue today. Okay, so the first thing is I'm arguing there's a systemic collapse already underway. We have information. I'm going to go through 5 charts to show you some of that. Let's do that now, I guess. The first chart will be, yes, that shows, if you can see sort of about a third of the way along, it's at the peak and then it drops down. This is labor participation rate. It shows that there's been a pretty steep decline in the labor participation rate, which means a lot of Americans are not working. I can add some more numbers in here. 1/6 of Americans are living in poverty. 100 million Americans are on one form of federal welfare or another. 1 million school children are homeless. 100 million out of 242 million working-age Americans are not working. And there are other numbers that are kind of unbelievable. So these things, of course, the mainstream media is not pointing these things out every day. So the next graph will show, this is total gasoline retail sales. So in other words, like the gas we use for our cars. from around 2003 to 2013, it's declined by 50%. So yes, we got the clunkers off the road. Yes, we have more hybrids. But 50% drop in gasoline usage. So it strikes me that middle-class Americans don't have as much money to spend on driving, taking vacations, and things like that. So this is another signal that things are not so great in the state of Denmark. Okay, the next one, however, is really, they don't show this everywhere. Can you see that real sharp spike in the middle? The one that goes way up and comes down? That is the amount of deposits held by French and German banks and wealthy people in Cyprus. Okay? And the reason everybody wanted to go into Cyprus is they offered 4.5% for deposits held for a year or longer, whereas at the time the German and French banks were only offering 0.5%. So it's like way back. So everybody rushed their money over there. So then why did the Germans and French take all their money out 1 year before the crisis? And the other ones, that other top flat one, is other countries, people from other countries investing in Cyprus, putting their deposits, savings into Cyprus. And the bottom two ones are Russian wealthy putting their deposits in, and also the deposits of the local Cyprus citizens. So you can see that basically the three other lines are almost flat, but the ones from France and Germany went way up and then went way down before the crisis struck, which is around, towards the right of the 2012, 2013 is where the crisis struck. So it appears that someone tipped them off, to me anyway, whereas the other people didn't get the message. That's really what it looks like. So you have Lagarde, who's a French woman in charge of the IMF, and you have Frau Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, who's in charge of, has a lot of controls the reins of the European Union, basically the economic side anyway. So that just that looks suspicious to me. And we do know that what came out of there was the Cyprus model is now history, that you can go into the deposits, the savings deposits in banks and take the money put in there by the average citizens of that country. That's what they did. Okay, now, this morning I read that's now been set up in Ireland. And they've already started doing it in Ireland because there's a bank failing there. Canada, New Zealand, a few other countries are already almost passing legislation to do the same thing. That's called bail-ins, where they go in and take some of the depositors' money out and then to help rescue the bank. And then what's not commonly known is that the FDIC, right, that's the ones in the US that insures our savings account. The FDIC has a written agreement with the Bank of England to do the same thing in the US. That was entered into in December, before the Cyprus incident. So we're starting to see like this might be like a global plan. And if you're on the inside, you have the inside information, you might do something else with your money. If you're not on the inside, you lose out. So I'm just saying, this is very cynical, but this is what the data is showing and, the reports are showing today. Okay, the next one is, what is one of the sources of all of this kind of economic breakdown that we're having today and the loss of the value of the dollar? Well, it's in 1913, the Federal Reserve was created by Congress, and at that time, they then started to go off the gold standard, and they went to this idea that you can print all the dollars you want, just run a printing press. So since they started printing in 1913, the value of the dollar has declined 96%. That is a huge drop. So, we may feel like we have more money, but actually each dollar is worth way, way, way less. So this is, people who count this up say basically this is a real hit on the middle class, which tries to save money because the money they've saved is now worth less. Okay, so a lot of this is a hit on the middle class. Now, if you can see on the right side of that graph, post-1913, well, the Federal Reserve, by the way, the Federal Reserve represents the biggest banks in America. It's not a federal government agency. It's a private agency, the board of trustees of which come from places like Citibank, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, et cetera. Okay, you can see three sharp spikes. This is the Dow to gold ratio. So it's how much the Dow Jones goes up relative to gold. And you can see it spiked way up 3 times. right before 1929, sort of in the mid-60s. We know that, those of us who are around then. And then around 2000, before the dot-com bubble burst and all the other problems we've had. So guess who makes money when the stock market goes up? It's the inside traders. The big money people make money. But you know who makes money when the market goes down? It's the same people, because some people have proven it, but it hasn't been widely, totally accepted, is that the inside group also can manipulate the prices down. And so it has been shown that J.P. Morgan triggered the collapse of 1904, 1906, somewhere in there, that J.P. Morgan himself triggered that collapse, and he made money because he shorted at the top and then made money as it went down. And this is unbelievable. And so 1929, a similar thing, similar now, presumably, history will show us later. I think that will prove to be the case. So this happens because when you de-link the US dollar from gold, it can be manipulated up and down. When it's connected to gold, it has to stay close to the value of the price of gold. And that makes it way more difficult to manipulate. So one thing we have to consider in the years to come is, well, A, should we still have the Federal Reserve if they're doing that to the American public? And B, should we be on some form of connection, relinking the dollar to either gold or silver or both? So I'm just pointing that out as it's probably going to be, within 12 months, it's probably going to be in the front of everyone's mind, all the senators and congressmen who are looking at this. But right now, they're not. Some of them know about it, but others are ignoring it. Okay, the last slide. What do you do if there's a collapse? Okay, you can see that the top line represents unemployment in Greece, peaking at over 26% today. So since early 2009, their unemployment rate has just been skyrocketing in Greece. So the bottom line is trending down slowly is unemployment in Iceland. So guess what happened in Iceland about 6 or 7 years ago? They went bankrupt, but it is now called the Iceland model. When they went bankrupt, they did not run in and throw billions or trillions to save the banks. They let the banks fail. So the Iceland model is to let the banks fail, and when that happens, guess what happens when the public has all this debt from mortgages for houses, auto loans, student debt. By the way, student loans is now the second largest consumer loan category after mortgages. It's huge. It's over $1 trillion. So we've saddled our students with huge amounts of loans compared to even 20 years ago. Okay. So what happens is that there is a default on all loans because there's nobody to pay back. The banks are all dead. Okay? What you do is 60 days later, the banks start all over again, get a new charters, and just start from scratch. But what happens with that is there's a debt jubilee, which is that all the debts are forgiven, and the public starts fresh. So that's what happened back there where that dotted vertical line is. And now you can see what happened to Iceland unemployment since then. It's trending down, whereas all the other countries in Europe are having big troubles with unemployment because they're basically saddled with debt in the other countries. So I'm just pointing that out there. I mean, I'm not the only one saying this, but right now not very many are saying maybe we need to start considering this in this country. Why? Because again, it has not been published, but we did not just give the banks an $800 billion bailout in 2008 and some other things, LTR, all these other things were given to the banks. Catherine Austin Fitts, who was Assistant Secretary of Labor, I think under Clinton, I'm not sure which, and she does independent consulting now. She's pointed out, looked at the numbers, 27 trillion has been given to the banks in off-book loans and other forms of support to save the banks because they were in really bad shape in 2007, 2008, even worse than we were told. They were basically all belly up, but they were rescued. And the 27 trillion, that's a huge number, right, came from Social Security and Medicare. So those people in Congress who are talking about, well, we have to cut back Social Security because we have such a bad budget. Well, why is there a bad budget? It's because we've been taking out the Social Security and Medicare funds to pay for saving banks and also pay for the wars, by the way. Because the wars in Iraq did not they did not pay for themselves, right? We were told when that was going to happen, oh, we'll take over the oil industry and we'll pay us back for the cost of that war. That didn't happen. Okay? So this is a quick primer on like what's going on with the economy and what we're sort of not being told. I want to suggest that this raises up 2 or 3 notches, the level of severity of what's going on in the country and what's wrong. I think it's dragging down to democracy. And so I'm just going to point out 3 quick things. These are things we already know. That Congress, since 1960, changed the tax structure, income tax structures, where in the 1960s, under Eisenhower and leading into Kennedy and so on, the tax for the super rich was 75%. You know, if you made in the top 1%, you're paying 75%. It's been, and the middle class was paying about 35%. Okay, it's been flipped now, because the middle class is still paying 25, 30, 35%. And the wealthy, their income tax has dropped down to 15% for long-term capital gains and other forms of derivatives trading, all this kind of strange stuff. But in the end, they have so much of their money in long-term investing that their tax payments are really, really low. You know, you have Warren Buffett saying, you know, he doesn't understand why his secretary has to pay more in taxes than he does, because he has all these tax shelters. I mean, come on, this is like, what kind of democracy do we have now? So that's Congress, kind of, in my view, over the last 20, 30 years, having sold out the middle class. What about the presidents? Well, the presidents brought us NAFTA, this is Clinton, a Democrat, and 2 oil wars, which have depleted the federal budget and our treasury. And so that comes from the president. And the NAFTA, of course, led to a lot of our jobs being exported offshore. So those are jobs I don't think we're going to get back. Maybe we can try, but right now it doesn't look like they're coming back soon. These are manufacturing jobs, which was the core of America from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and into the early 80s. It led to a lot of our parents being, you know, okay. I mean, you know, things are pretty good. You know, 1 or 2 cars, a TV, take vacations, you know, 1 2-week vacations. So this is kind of not happening anymore. And so that's Congress, the president, and then the third branch is the U.S. Supreme Court. And you all know about Citizens United, where they gave sort of these associations the right to be citizens, and these associations kind of were basically lobbyists. They raised money to donate to the senators and congressmen and president and so on, so in campaigns. So what that means is that basically the power of money has now been amped up. They can buy candidates now, and they can buy elections, the totally wealthy. And so those of you who come out of social sciences might remember that Alexis de Tocqueville warned that he's the one who came from France and studied the U.S. democracy in the 1830s. Wonderful democracy, all these things that are good about it. People participate in the town halls, mostly in New England and a little bit in the Atlantic states, but in general it was very vibrant. He says, however, I see a danger that if the wealthy capitalists ever take control of this democracy, it will not be a true democracy anymore. So to me, it feels like we've kind of evolved to that point. So I would argue that we're in the front end of a breakdown, not only of the economy, but of a democracy that's been taken over by neoliberal, basically super wealthy people. And that working hand in hand, it's brought the system to a real, very questionable point of whether we can survive in this form. So this is all backdrop to what I think might be a great opportunity, because we all know, those of us who've been working in institutions a long time, it's hard to change a place when everything's going great. But if things fall into crisis, that is an opportunity to maybe question what we're doing from the bottom up, start over again, have it bring in look at our assumptions, bring in new ideas, maybe restructure the infrastructure of the organization. I'm going to suggest that we're approaching the period where we're going to need to do that in this country. And again, as Americans, though, we're pragmatic. We can stand up, work together, and start to do it. We don't have to just sit down and cry in a bowl of Jell-O, melted Jell-O. We can do something about it. So in this workshop, we're going to do 2 things, which I think are precursors to that kind of reform. If we can model that here, then I think we can model it with our students, and those students will go out there and become citizens and leaders in doing the work that needs to be done in the next 20 years. That's my hope. So, please give me feedback during or afterwards, because You're the second group to get this. I did this at the UCLA Paulo Freire Institute a week and a half ago, and then I'm doing it with my class tonight. So I got to fly back up to Oakland, so I'm going to be tired by the end of that. But so it's very fresh stuff. It's in a book manuscript that I have not turned the last draft in yet to my publisher. So you're getting stuff that's not out yet. I think this combination of looking at capitalism, the democracy, diversity, and then how do you develop a more participatory democracy where people work together in a bottom-up fashion and stay engaged with their democracy and actually push policy up from the bottom up, as opposed to voting for somebody in a representative democracy, hoping they take care of you, but then they take more money in the back pocket, of course, because there's no limit now after Citizens United, and so they end up voting, casting ballots in favor of that wealthy superclass. So I think that's what's, in the end, has really killed our democracy. Okay, so what we're going to do today is, I passed out the gray, you passed out the, okay. So you can look at this later, that the summary sheet in the back says basically, number one, total economic collapse may be underway already. Number two, the underlying this collapse is a deeper underlying lack of shared meaning. You know, we don't have like a lot of ethnic culture like they might have in France or Switzerland or Germany or Ireland or China or Japan, where all the people share one set of cultural norms. You know, the anthropologists would refer to that as a set of shared meanings, that kind of thing. And so we don't have that in this country. You know, we have sort of an understanding of what democracy is and that we're pragmatic and, you know, can-do attitude in America. But other than that, to me, it seems like we need to maybe revisit this. And so this is my bias as an anthropologist, and maybe build back in shared meaning. But I also teach I'm lecturing to you now, but I usually teach in a very participatory way. And so my students in the class tonight taught me during the last 2 weeks, well, I don't think we'll ever get back to shared meaning where the European American students would go back and find 10 generations ago one part of their family was from Sweden, so I'm going to embrace the Swedish culture. The students are all laughing at me. They're saying, no, we can't do that. But we can form meaning and share it with other people. And we can do that based on the region where we're from. Could be the Cumberland Gap in Maryland or central Massachusetts or sort of a cornfield area in Iowa, but there's certain norms and duties and obligations, rituals, myths, and other kinds of patterns of behavior that attend to that group there. And if you become more clear about what they are and celebrate those meanings and share them with other people, my students are telling me this is the equivalent of everybody in one big group having one shared set of meanings. Instead, we have meanings individually that we share with each other. So this is kind of an intellectual explanation for what I think you'll be experiencing in a few minutes. So so that becomes, number three is an opportunity to remake U.S. institutions where we teach youth how to share new meaning making, how to do that. Number four, when they do have this skill set, those future citizens will be able to participate in a participatory democracy. And they'll be able to work with people who are different from themselves. So this is a more celebratory as opposed to a punitive, blaming approach to diversity. It's not even just diversity, it's working together to rebuild a country. And then number five you'd see is, I'm just saying, maybe we need a public education fund for K-12 and also college. There are countries in Europe where you get into college, it's paid for. I mean, you know, we have an amazing democracy, an amazing form of capitalism. I think we can afford spending money like that, but we'll see. Okay, so we're going to switch into a storytelling mode where you will each be empowered to tell your own stories in groups of 4. And here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to ask you to all stand up and get into groups of 4. You're going to have to all move around, really, because I want you to be with people you don't know very well. So there's someone you do know. So no one you know very well in your group. So four per group, diverse in gender, diverse in race, and from different forms of status in the campus, like top administration, faculty, exam staff, and so on. So very, very diverse. I'm sorry if I'm causing a conniption in all you. Oh, Yeah, student services, academic affairs, mix up. I don't want everybody from student services together. Okay, so if we could have your attention now, thank you.
I wasn't able to be here during the discussion piece of it, but I do know that we are in the midst of a cultural campus climate change. And this is what today's efforts were about. I think we're trying to bring about a paradigm shift at Los Angeles Mission College. I think it's about engagement, people talking, people bringing in integrity, honesty, a common mission to the college. In achieving the dream, which was where I was at, and then I had to run to the Burbank airport to drop off our data coach and just rushed back. There's a thread that goes through all of Achieving the Dream colleges. And it's about having courageous conversations. Talking about things that we might be uncomfortable about. And bringing those issues to the forefront so that we can deal with them. And this is what I think part of this is. It's about achieving the dream, which that is. It's about looking at our student population, understanding what our student population is, and not try to make it something that it's not. We understand where our student population comes from, the communities it comes from, and we have to start to set aside the kinds of curriculum, the kinds of programs, the kinds of student support that's going to increase our student success. And that's all what we're talking about. What the union has done is try to put together some discussion pieces to talk about where this college is going to be in the next few years, where we want it to be, what does it look like, who we are as a campus, and for their success. Because without their success, if you go to our website and you look at the front page of our website, there's something called a scorecard. It's a state report on every community college in the state of California. And you can see where we're at with retention, the composition of the campus, completion rates, how they fare in assessment, how they fare in a track of 6 years. And some of them are kind of startling and kind of, you shiver at the thought that only a small percentage of our students are getting through the pipeline in 6 years. A small percentage. And I think when you have these kinds of forums, you have these kinds of discussions, you bring together all of our expertises, you bring together what you have inside, and you bring that out to our students, we can see some of those success rates increase. I've talked in the last few years about a stable, flatline graduation number. In 2006, we had about 450 students graduate, and our student population was 7,500. By the end of by spring of 2010, we were up to over 11,000 students. The number of students graduating, 450. I can bet you right now, our student population is around 9,000. And I talked to Marta Rios, who's one of the people that's looking at our grad petitions and looking at that. It's about 450. So I think we really need to take a look at how are we doing and looking at our scorecard. And one of the reasons the State Chancellor's Office put this scorecard together is that students can go and look at the college, whether it's in their neighborhood or down the street, and say, which is a college that's achieving? Where are the achievements rates higher? Valley, Pierce, Glendale, Pasadena, College of the Canyons, Santa Monica College. You know? So they have a choice. But it's also to bring to attention to us to have an opportunity to look at what we're doing and how we're doing. And this, I applaud the efforts of the union and all those that are a part of this to bring about at least the beginning of the courageous conversations that have to take place, so that we work in a positive atmosphere, we work in an atmosphere of integrity, we work in an environment that's participatory, engaging, discussing what do we need to do to make this place better for us, for our students, for the community. So that's what this is about. And it just so happened that we had our Achieving the Dream coaches here the last couple of days, and some of you participated in some of the meetings that they offered. I know the Student Services had one this morning at 10:30, and it was great. And it was about building a culture of evidence. So if we look at the Student Success Initiative from the state, if we look at where accreditation is going, if we look at our self-evaluation, Achieving the Dream with a culture of evidence, data-based decisions, it all ties in. This workshop today, it all ties in. So we're all on the same wavelengths in terms of where we're going to go and what the next steps are. So thank you for staying for this, the whole part of this program. And you know, there's some of you that are really engaged in what you're doing, so we'll let you continue doing that. But thank you very much, and really appreciate the hard work everyone does in this room. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up this part, but if you want to stay and keep working on the poster for another 5-10 minutes, please do that. I want to thank you for being tremendous participants. I think you walked through a process, and I just dream, my dream is if America could do this, what you just did in 2 or 3 hours, where you come together, pull together as a diverse group with people, many of whom you didn't know before, and you start to dream together, and then you apply some of that thinking maybe to how to make this campus better. So please keep doing that challenging, difficult work. It's really worth it because we're training the next generation. Thank you very much.
I want to thank all of you for your patience, for sitting here, your passion, for your love of our campus, and let's just continue our good work and our positive spirit. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tanaka, for coming down and being with us. Wow, we're so privileged. Thank you.